Imagine going to work each day and knowing that just by what you were wearing would reduce the chances of injury or accidents happening during the day. My name is Maria Schaefer. I'm here to talk to you about personal protective equipment in the construction industry. Um, Changes to PPE have changed in recent history for the better, and I'm going to give you some examples of PPE and why it's important to wear personal protective equipment. Each year, accidents and injuries happen in the construction industry. Oftentimes, it's due to the absence of PPE or the failure to wear the PPE that is available to you. I spent 15 years in the field as a union laborer, and the last 3 years I've spent as an EHS manager in the field. And I've personally seen and experienced injuries due to a lack of not wearing PPE, and as a direct result of not wearing PPE. The three main points that I want to share with you today are the history of worker protection, what PPE consists of, and why we wear PPE. First of all, worker protection wasn't always the forefront of people's mind. Getting the job done, getting the building built was what was important. That all changed in 1971 when OSHA was enacted. OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and what their motto is that every worker goes home whole and healthy every single day. Since its enactment, fatality rates and injury rates have dropped dramatically. In 1970, 38 deaths per day were common in 1970, as compared to 13 deaths per day in 2015. As far as injuries and accidents go, 11 incidents per 100 workers in 1972 is very common, and that has dropped down to 3 accidents per incidents and accidents per 100 people in 2015. On a more closely related personal note, in the company that I work for the month of 2017, 27% of accidents and injuries were to the hands and fingers, followed closely with 18% to the leg, knee, or foot, and 14% to the head and neck. That data was collected by Mindy Uber and related to me via interview. Mindy Uber is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety. After understanding the history of PPE and the reasons for PPE, there's some examples that I want to go over with you and requirements for wearing the PPE. The first one that I want to talk to you about is the hard hat. This protects workers from impacts of falling and flying material. It has good top impact protection, a little bit side impact protection. All PPE needs to be rated by a third party. ANSI is the American National Standards Institute, and what they do is certify PPE. So on the inside of this hard hat, or any hard hat that you wear, you need to have the manufacturer's name, and has a tag on every hard hat. It's got the manufacturer's name, the standard that the hat conforms to, and this one in particular is Z89.1, the ANSI type, so type 1 or type 2, and the class designation. And what those are is there's different hard hats for different types of work out there, for mining, for road work, for electrical work. And it also has to have the size range for fitting, so you get a properly fitted hard hat, and the date of manufacture. Most hard hats are only good for 5 years, unless they are damaged before that 5-year mark, then they need to be replaced. The next thing I want to talk to you about are glasses. Glasses are, this is just one version of glasses. You wear these to protect your eyes from flying material, flying particles, splashes, anything like that. And these have to be rated Z87.1, ANSI Z87.1, and they also have to have side protection for the side of your eyes here. Can't just be regular prescription glasses. The next thing I want to talk to you about is high visibility vest. This one is in particular is class 2 rated, and it's rated class 2 because it has the 2 stripes that go over the shoulders and 2 horizontal stripes that surround your torso. So this has to be rated by ANSI 107. This is worn in environments where you are working around a lot of equipment or the roadway or cars, and it just helps you be seen better by anyone out there working. It's a hazardous atmosphere, hazardous job, And so what the requirements are for a Class 2 is 775 inches of background material, either orange or yellow, and 201 inches of square inches of reflective material. Um, and the next thing I want to talk to you about are gloves. This is just one version of a cut level 3 glove. The reason that we wear the gloves is because it protects your hands and your fingers, which I stated earlier was the biggest injuries, the highest rated injuries in our field, at least in our company. These are the most common injury. They're worn to protect cut hazards, punctures, chemical burns, thermal burns, temperature extremes, and they must be rated by ANSI 105. This is just one version of them. The last thing I want to talk to you about are boots. Boots, a good ankle supporting work boot, leather boot. Some of them have steel toe. It's going to prevent you from punctures, from stepping on nails or screws. It's going to prevent protect your feet from falling materials and objects. The nice ankle supporting boot, it's going to help you. There's a lot of uneven surfaces out there, so that's going to help so you don't roll your ankle. And those are required as well. Those have to be rated by ANSI Z41-1999. So finally, what we wear in regards to PPE is just as important as why we wear it. So the reasons why we wear PPE is obviously the first thing is to reduce injury. If we're out there and we're getting hurt, we're not helping support our family, and we definitely want to reduce accidents and injuries associated with all the hazardous atmospheres and materials that we're working with every day out there. And then the second one is worker protection. It should be a last resort, though. What we want to try to do before we put all this PPE on is try to eliminate the hazard using the hierarchy of controls. So the hierarchy of controls is eliminating the hazard first and then replacing the hazard with something else via guardrail or a hole cover or something like that. And then the next step would be isolating people from the hazard. And then we put some administrative controls in place. And finally, PPE would be the last resort. But as you have learned, there are many types of different kinds of PPE available to construction workers, and you have learned why it is important to wear and a little bit about the history of PPE. Understanding the history, what it is, and why we wear it is beneficial because it brings more awareness to protecting workers in the construction industry. We need to use the more effective ways to reduce workplace injuries by eliminating potential hazards. Protecting our workers is important as well because eliminating them is not always possible. If we can't eliminate them, that's when the PPE comes into play. We're going to have fewer injuries due to these controls that we put in place, and workers are going to go home tired, they're going to go home sore, they're going to go home dirty, but they're going to go home safe. And I hope that you remember the next time that you go out and go to work that there's nothing on that job site, nothing at all worth getting hurt over. Thanks.